What's up, everybody? It is Ricci here from the F1 podcast. Today is December 14th, 2023, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Cleary. Andrew, how are you doing, my man? Happy Baby
I
Friday.
am doing well. It's Thursday, baby Friday, Friday Eve. We are embarking on holiday season. You know, the work parties are coming up. Everyone's got functions, Christmas parties. The holiday season is always a great time to be alive.
Yeah, and especially like I don't know about you, but like I feel like every restaurant or bar in like the downtown of Toronto, there's like somebody's got it booked out for a holiday party.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like I've been trying to go to craft for post work drinks and after work, and it's like every time there's an event going on there.
Just say you're part of the event.
Clearly, I need to work on my my poker face. So what we wanted to record today is, I think we have a lot to talk about because let's just talk about some of our predictions that we made before the season. I think, let's be real, you and I had some high hopes. Erica had some high hopes. Tyler had high hopes. A lot of us had some interesting opinions. And what better way to fast forward 1 year from that episode that we did? I don't know. I think that was episode 3 or whatever, to talk about how completely wrong we were.
I mean, like, if you were to look up the word horrendous in the dictionary, you would just have to revert to our F1 predictions as a picture of the word because oh my God, I re-listened to that episode, and yes, and today we're doing our season year-end review where we get to laugh at ourselves for how uh you know downright asinine our predictions were at times, but uh that's the beauty of sport, right? This year we got some of it mostly completely wrong. We thought teams were going to be great. They were crap. We thought a team was going to be really bad, and they were until Silverstone, and they figured it out and turned to be really good. But I think we'd be good to start with going through our bold predictions, Ricci. Eric had bold predictions. You had bold prediction. I had some really bold predictions. Uh, we're going to do a little scrutiny on you to start with your bold predictions. Your first one being that Max Verstappen would win his third F1 title in a row. So bold, probably as bold as like salt and pepper chicken wings, but hey, you take the W's where you can, right, bud?
Yeah, just not only that, I even looked on FanDuel today, and I think for him to win his fourth title in a row, he's at minus 390. So it
Yeah,
just shows how
it's not
the
even money worthy for the bet.
yeah, so I think that was the only positive of any of my predictions. And to be quite fair, I did say that he was going to win, and I think I made a quote that he's going to win by a hefty margin. And I don't think I really defined what hefty meant,
Did you mean
but
by record-setting margin by
no,
chance?
I thought maybe like 100, like say yeah. So I think I'll go for a point and a half there if we really want to mark
Well,
on a tip.
just overall, Max Verstappen this year was the king, right? Literally, he could not be dethroned. Most wins with 19, beating his old record from last year, 50. Most podiums with 21. Most consecutive wins with 10. Most wins with pole. He won all 12 races from pole this year. He had 575 points, which is 121 more than the previous record that was also set by him. Most hat tricks, as you mentioned last week, pole win, fastest lap with 6 of them. Biggest championship winning margin, 285 points, I think 290 points, which Sergio Perez scored 285. So the gap between P2 and P20 was smaller than P1 and P2, right? Just insane. He led 75.7% of the laps, a total of 1,003 laps this year. He became the first driver to lead over 1,000 laps in a season, and he won 4 of the 6 sprint races. After Abu Dhabi, you could tell he was a little emotional about not being able to drive this car again, because, the RB19 will probably go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest drive or car, or, I guess constructed car for a Formula One season. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be yelling at me saying, Ferrari 2004, McLaren back with Senna and Prost was, I forget the model of their car, but I think it's a contender. because that car won 21 of 22 races this season.
Yeah, especially like we always just kind of anticipate, like we knew that Red Bull was going to be dominant this year, but we didn't really anticipate it to be that dominant. I mean, testing in Bahrain, they look pretty fly and they look pretty confident going into things, but it was just amazing just to kind of see what he was able to do. And I think, full disclosure, I think that was probably the best car ever to drive in Formula One. I cannot think of anything close to that margin, and especially it also helped that he was a good quality driver, and we did see some good racing from Sergio Perez this season. Not as consistent as Max Verstappen, and we saw that Sergio did struggle in qualifying for a number of reasons, whereas his teammate was able to like achieve that no problem. Having said that, I think that is the only check mark on my list.
Well, you did also have that Ferrari was going to win the Constructors' Championship this season.
Yeah, no, next. I think I think there was some hope at early, but I think what we started to realize was, I remember just you and I were sitting in Trinity Common, and then Aston Martin getting that, Fernando Alonso getting his first podium in his first race, then those consistent podiums up there, and then just like I think by race 6 or 7, I just said, okay, this is a fantasy. This is not going to happen. But my next comment was really interesting. I said it was going to be competitive for the top 4 drivers, and not counting Max Verstappen, I think that's a half mark. I think it was somewhat competitive between the top 3 or top 4, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, like early on in the season, right? We saw Alonso with consistent podiums, right? He finished P3 in 4 of the first 5 races. With Azerbaijan, he finished P4. Sergio was trading wins with Max at the beginning of the season as well. And then Lewis was, P5, P6, but then had a podium in Australia as well. He got better as the year went on to challenge for Sergio. And Alonso just had a godlike year in the 5th fastest car. Finishing P4 in the 5th fastest car, clearly on track, is quite an incredible achievement overall. And what was really good was to see just the number of sheer podiums that people were able to achieve, right? We had, I believe, like Max had, 1, 2, I think, Hamilton, Alonso, Leclerc had a podium, Norris had a podium, Sainz had a podium, Russell, Piastri had a couple podiums, Esteban Ocon had like half the grid had podiums pretty much this season, which we couldn't say that about last season, right? Not like it, I think like there was about 7, 6, like outside of Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull last year. I only believe like there was only one podium won by I believe it was Lando, if I'm not mistaken. But just kind of having that kind of variety this year was really good to see for the sport. I know people are going to complain that this year was stupid boring because Max won everything. But A, respect the greatness that he put that car in, and B, start to look for other battles to start enjoying F1 in that case. Because that's what we had to do, right? To make this season enjoyable, is find those mid-season battles. And once you found them, they were fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think just double check. Yes, you are right. Lando Norris was, other than the Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari, was the only driver last year to get a podium. And so I think at least we did see a little bit of that. And I think, there was competitiveness between the top 4 drivers, but I don't think I said this directly in the episode. I'm just not, I don't know if I'm quoting this correctly, but I said that we're hoping to see more of a competitive midfield. And I think for the most part, I think we did definitely see that. And we obviously saw a complete jump, because we had Aston Martin starting off very well in the season, and then they went for a dive, and then McLaren went down and then it just slowly got their back up. So is Sergio going to play as a teammate, or is he going to compete? And I think I just made a general question there. I guess, was I right in the end? I think he was able to achieve P2. So for the most part, I think he was a teammate. No?
Yeah, but the gap between him and Max was so big.
So even if he wanted to be a teammate, there's nothing.
Just Sergio could not figure that car out in qualifying for a good, for the whole entire season, pretty much, right? And he had to battle a lot back through the midfield in order to challenge, especially after the first 4 races, right? He was, I remember Monaco when he got double lapped by Max in the same car. Like that is never good. Like you not only get lapped once in the same car, but to get lapped twice in the same race. Oh man, like just sheer pain. I think that knocked Sergio's confidence quite a bit because he was fighting back through the midfield quite a bit this season to get to like his P3, his P2 finishes, right? Where sometimes he'd only finish P4, P6. So he wasn't really challenging Max in that regards. He was a good teammate at the end of the day, finished P2 in the constructors for Red Bull's first ever 1-2 finish in the World Drivers standings. And, Red Bull setting a team record of 860 team points this season to blow Mercedes and Ferrari out of the water. Yeah, he played the team game, I would say, but it was he wasn't really much fighting his teammate in that regards.
One bold prediction I had in my group was Zach Brown out as CEO, but I think it's the complete opposite now. I think that is probably the unsung story. And I think quite honestly, when we go into the Formies Awards, is just the bounce back of McLaren in the second part of the season, and even the drives of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. And I think that's definitely was just wild to think how much they were able to achieve in the second part of the season. I think, Andrew, let's maybe talk about some of your predictions. And honestly, I won't blame you. Like, these are some pretty fair predictions. Win a race or two this year for Aston Martin. How did that go?
I mean, like it was opportunistic. There was, Alonso finishing P3 in the first, 4 or 5 races, as I mentioned earlier, that why not think that Aston Martin could win a race, especially in a chance where, they could have, I felt like they could have won it potentially in Monaco. They really coughed that up with the bad tires change in that regards. But I don't know. I thought, of course, preseason testing always had a good thought. I had a really good thought about the team, and why not? You're always looking for one of those kind of shock results in the season. And I felt Aston Martin would be kind of that shock result in that case.
So I guess talking about that is one of the comments that you had here is that Aston Martin is would have an incredible year. And I think it's safe to say, despite the kind of struggles in the second year, I think you can walk away with like this season being an incredible year. No, I mean,
coming up from P7 to P5, with glimmers of hope being at P2 for the longest, for a while there to start the season in terms of a constructors championship. Alonso really was able to just make the most of the car and finish P4. And as I mentioned, the fifth fastest car, where, he felt at the beginning of the season, especially with Lance, you felt like maybe he could have gotten better points, but maybe it was just that overall, it was just Alonso, breath of fresh air coming into a new team for him. And that he was able to then, take advantage of that car. It suited his style. And I think this was probably one of the best seasons, that we've ever seen from Fernando Alonso outside of those 2 World Driver Championship seasons. I'd probably say this has to be his best one, just based on what he did with that car.
Yeah, no, I totally, especially like I'm gonna be honest, like I think a lot of and what we even see this in our like predictions is we didn't really expect much from Aston Martin from the year they had previously. With I think only achieving like 2 podiums, if I'm not mistaken, with Vettel. I mean, I think one thing that you can at least applaud yourself with is you said from 4 to 8 was going to be between 20 points, and actually it was 31 points between, so not bad.
Yeah, and and that's just my essence was that the midfielder is going to be more bunched up this year in terms of that opportunity, and we did see that, right? We saw a really competitive Mercedes Ferrari fight for P2, P3, and then even McLaren and Aston Martin duking it out for P4 in the constructors, right, being within 20 points. That kind of resulted just based on overall drivers in that case, that P4 through P8. George Russell's finishing up with 175 points. And Fernando Alonso finishing at 206. So really it was really tight, especially when we had, Alonso and Leclerc tied at 206 each for P4, Fernando winning that based on more podiums. But then we had Lando Norris right behind it, 205, and then Carlos Sainz at 200, right? So 4 through 7 was separated by a gap of 6 points. That's quite incredible. That's incredible. And I think that's what you want to see. That's what we want to see more going from 2024 onwards, is like, hoping that the competition then can get closer to Red Bull overall in general. Maybe that sort of style of battle goes then towards more of the the P1, P2, P3 area. But to see it built in with that P4 through P8 or P7, it was fun to watch. Especially Abu Dhabi had a ton of implications for that for that area in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, and I think that totally that's very fair. But I think let's just not only just like I think some final comments here. I think you had Fernando Alonso to win more races than Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz did win one race, but however, I think we did talk about that. There were opportunities where Fernando Alonso could have won, and I think that especially we probably didn't have that feeling beforehand. But like as the first 6 races, where I think you got podiums 5 out of the 6, there could have been that opportunity if there was one screw up by Red Bull. But I think this was really funny. Go ahead, yeah.
I did say there was going to be 7 different winners this year.
Maybe 7 different time zones that Max Verstappen won in.
That's actually such a good shout, Ricci. I love that. Yeah, 7 different time zones for that winner. But going back to Fernando Alonso, in the sense that what you still have to be able to come out on top. And what Carlos Sainz did that weekend in Singapore was just incredible. Gave breath of new fresh air to the sport too. I think like a lot of people tuned in once they noticed that Max wasn't winning in that case. So kudos to your boy in the red and yellow by achieving the gold. Singapore, sorry, different style, but anyways, I say I didn't see Mercedes going P3. That's fair. I didn't see them going P3. I saw them going P2. No, I'm just joking. They turned it around a little bit this year. It's good. It looks like they're having a whole new redesign for the 2024 car. Based on what I've heard is that due to the non-side pod era, it made them have a really heavy gearbox, which created a lot of drag, and that was their major issue.
And I think we even talked about this in last week's episode, where like Lewis Hamilton had some doubts about the 2024 car. So I honestly, I think we'll just find out when Bahrain testing comes around in February. So Erica couldn't make it to today's episode. She's feeling under the weather, but let's go through her predictions. And honestly, I think she was the smarter one about us too. I think she got most of hers.
She said Red Bull will be dominant again this year, and they were just destroyed them. She did say that McLaren was going to take a tumble, and we'll go down the list. That was fair because when we watched that first race together at Trinity Common for the Bahrain Grand Prix, they had that McLaren was in absolute shambles. Lando had 6 pit stops to help fix a hydraulic issue. Oscar DNF, it was really bad. But then they flipped the switch. Kia's, I think they got rid of some. They brought an Andrea Stella, which I thought was the key for them to really be able to turn that car on. And they had the most improvement, obviously, by far.
Yeah, and I think definitely we'll touch a little bit. I think they have a fair shot about the awards for our formies. She also made a comment that Lewis Hamilton will win more races and more races. Again, it's just one of those things where there could have been that opportunity. It's just that things, if they went a little bit further for some of the other teams. Mind you, we did see the gap of victory for Max Verstappen close towards the end of the year. However, I don't think they developed the car August onwards.
Yeah, he made a really good point at the end of Abu Dhabi where it was concerning that they still won the race Max still won by 17 seconds, considering they hadn't developed a car since August. And for Lewis, though, what I think the highlight of the season for him was his 9th pole at the Hungaroring, making him, I think, the record. He had the record for most poles at a single track. I believe Schumacher did 8. I forget where, maybe in Hungary too. But Lewis with his 9th pole, and you could really tell how excited and how much that really boosted his spirits up. Getting that pole position, considering how tough. But the car was just, again, it was draggy as for Mercedes, and even though they did switch to that side pod concept halfway through the year, it just wasn't enough, right? But if they are able to figure it out in 2024. Watch out, because Lewis is going to be a man on a mission, and I don't think George Russell's going to be able to stop him and trying to fight for his 8th championship.
Yeah, and the last comment here from Erica was Aston Martin was going to go against Mercedes and P3 constructors, so that was close, ish. We're so off.
Well, if you want to know off, let's then talk about what we felt were the driver standings.
Okay, what was our over and under? How many we got right?
We got one right.
Oh my gosh, was that Max Verstappen?
And that was Max Verstappen. We couldn't even get Logan Sargent right in P20. He finished P21. We couldn't even get the last place right.
Okay, all right, let's go through them.
All right, so we had Max Verstappen finishing P1. He finished P1, which was great. We had Charles Leclerc finishing P2 to start. He finished P5. Honestly, a bit of a down year for the Monegasque. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I think, well, not only that, is like Carlos Sainz got to win again, so that it just gives him more, I don't know if he's pissed off, but like the fact that he has not won he didn't win a race at all this year, only bagged a couple of podiums, just like, I'd be probably pissed. Yeah, so I would say this is a disappointment.
Well, and also, I think what's a frustrating part too is that he had 5 pole positions this season, and he couldn't convert on any one of them. No, I'm not trying to sound like I'm just saying that is frustrating to see, right? Because he did prove himself. He could be fast, but he had, I believe, he had 3 retirements. He had a did not start in Brazil. He had a disqualification in Austin because of the joke, plank test that only a few got subjected to, but nevertheless, it is what it is. Sergio Perez, we predicted him to finish P3. He finished P2, only 1 off. I think that's pretty good on our end. Kind of same idea with regards to Carlos Sainz. We had him finishing P4. He finished P7. So he did finish behind Leclerc. So Leclerc obviously was more consistent in that regards, but, Sainz having the first win.
I think also because it was 6 points difference, but also, I think, do you really give Leclerc the edge here because Carlos was at least able to get a win?
He also had some just horrible luck this season.
I think right? Ferrari just not had a good season. Other than that win, that was it.
Sainz's, the penalty that he received in Australia, right? That was at least 12 points he missed out there, right? Easily beating Leclerc.
Or how he went over a manhole in Las Vegas, and apparently that was his fault.
Yep. Yeah, and Charles finished P2 there, Sainz finishing P6, right? So it's those little nuances there that, it's like, do the, because it was only, Leclerc was only 6, Sainz was only 6 points behind Leclerc. So it's like, do you really think he had a better season in that regards? I think that would be, it's going to be a conversation topic, especially at Ferrari, in determining, is there going to be a number 1 driver moving forward? And if so, is that Charles Leclerc?
Anticipating if he's going to re-sign for Ferrari. And I think he will, but just how long and how much does that amount? And where does Carlos Sainz? Yeah, it's a good question. Where does Carlos Sainz play in the whole Maranello strategy here? Are they going to try to run a 2 drivers, or are they going to? Because I don't know. I think they need to figure that out, because I don't think we saw periods this season where that was not really the case.
Well, especially too when his contract's coming up too, right? And if it's reported that Leclerc is signing a 5-year extension, it makes you almost wonder. But as we'll continue going through, so Lewis Hamilton, we had P5. He finished P3, so, better than what we expected. George Russell, surprising, finished P8, and we had him predicted finishing P6. He had a bit of a down season.
Yeah, and I think it was a couple of things. He screwed himself over in a number of qualifyings. He had a couple of retirements. And I think towards the end of the season, he was able to bag that 3rd place finish in Abu Dhabi. But I think he admitted that was a stroke of luck.
And, remember Singapore when he was chasing Sainz and Leclerc down, and he went into the wall, went to just kind of those little mistakes were really cost him the season in that regards. Had a couple of retirements too, which weren't good, and only 2 podiums this season for him compared to Hamilton, who I believe had 6.
Yeah, unsung hero. I think a lot of people did not give the Hamilton credit for the season that he had, particularly for what he was able to achieve.
He was at a bounce back after a abysmal 2022 campaign. And that just goes to show the championship pedigree that he has. And if they give him a car that's great next season, watch out. Should be a lot of fun.
You want to speak about bounce back? We'll talk about the next driver.
Yeah, we had Fernando Alonso finishing P7 and P4. I sound like a broken record here, but just an incredible way to make Pier 4 the fifth fastest car on the grid in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Down seasons also, Esteban Ocon, we presumed P8, he finished P12, and outside of a podium at Monaco, which was, just incredible in that regards. It was a tough season for him, man. He had I think he had about 6 or 7 retirements alone in that Alpine, but overall, Alpine was just a garbage shoot for a team this season.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. Like I did have issues with both him and Pierre on the same team, two French drivers for a French engine and a French team. So it's like, okay, well, who's going to be the number one French driver? And also, it's like they just like there's been a number of fights, not like I don't know fights, but bickerings on the radio about each other. Curious to see if Drive Survive will cover this. And Matt, remember we talked about earlier in the season the major splash of championship players and now Ryan Reynolds comes into the teams. So it's just like you got to think about it. It's like how do they be able to pay attention with all these big names behind them, either supporting them or it's like, okay, is the focus on the drivers or the focus on the people that are dumping millions of dollars into the team? But I also think that Ryan Reynolds, maybe he did a better thing investing in Alpine than the Ottawa Senators. Sorry, Ottawa fans, just there's my opinion.
Pierre Gasly finishing, we had him finishing P9, he finished P11. Semantics at that point, but these next two were just like horrendous from our part. One, because we didn't get enough credit to a team, when we just, we gave too much credit. So we had Valtteri Bottas finishing P10 and he finished P15. John, overall, that Alfa Romeo was so slow this year.
It's disappointing because I think they had like such a great season last year. And I think that was kind of one team that I think we circled last year. Like, wow, like Valtteri is able to do this. Zhou looked pretty good in that car. And there were some moments of like excitement, even at the start of the season, like Valtteri getting points in Bahrain. And then you had Zhou getting points in Australia. And then they were not able to get anything for a long period. Even for Zhou, he had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight races of like not enough points.
Only able to get, I think, a double points finish once between the two of them this season. I believe that was in Qatar, but it seemed like they were always pretty much near the slowest car on the grid come race day. Then, they'd bring these upgrades, but then they would still be behind the development cycle. And I don't know if it had to do anything with regards to, Alfa Romeo leaving Sauber next season as the title sponsor. In that regards, if that played any effect in that role. But I don't, even Valtteri said it at the end of the year, is like they just weren't able to consistently meet the targets that they were trying to set for them for development. And every team just kept overdeveloping when they brought upgrades.
Yeah, and I think it's just a question. I know like we talked about the Ferrari engine and we saw like cases of that with Alfa Romeo this year and last year at certain points where it just like was not working completely for them.
But the next person, Lando Norris, we had him finishing P11 and he finished P6. We are sorry, Lando. We apologize.
Please forgive us, Lando Norris. Please forgive us.
I mean,
you had to bounce back. And then him and Oscar had like whatever happened. Was it the summer break or was it Great Britain onward or the British Grand Prix onwards?
Like they were so bad to start, man. Lando, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia were just abysmal. I mean, if you were a McLaren fan, you were just so grumpy, just based on how back the development was, and they were able to get, Lando's finished a couple points and a couple points finishes in like Australia and Azerbaijan, but then really it was Austria that kind of turned it around, and then then Silverstone really kicked it into gear for them. But we had Lance Stroll finishing P12, he finished P10th, up a couple. So, respect to Lance, especially when he had a couple broken wrists to start the season. Wasn't able to maximize maybe potential points there, but he came on strong towards the end with a couple P5 finishes in the last three races in that regards. We have Kevin Magnussen, we predicted to finish P13. Dude finished P19.
I think that honestly, I'm gonna be honest, that's the one that threw me completely off this year. I anticipate him out driving Nico Hulkenberg this year, and like complete 180. I honestly gonna be very honest here.
Yeah, because he had more experience in that Haas team than Nico did, and Nico came in and he beat him in his first year there, and I mean, like, destroyed him, like raced head to head on races, head to head in qualifying points. I think they both had the same amount of retirements at 3, but that was it. That Haas, the VF23 was a tire eater. It ate tires for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, man. Like, it would have a great qualifying session, but my God, in the race, they were just the tires would just go, and there was no way to sustain performance on that. So, I mean, again, we always keep saying this: Haas has got to pick it up.
Yeah, and I think they definitely need to if they really want to, be relevant in Formula One, especially if Andretti does come in with his new team.
I totally agree. We'll keep just quick. So, Zhou finishing, we got P14, he finished P18. Similar idea to Valtteri with regards to car performance. Nico Hulkenberg, we had finishing P16, he finished P15, he finished P16, so down one. This one's we have a couple big ones here now that were just kind of like mind-blowing for us. But we had Oscar Piastri finishing P16. The guy finished P9. And I don't know if you ever seen that like Shaq meme where it's like, I apologize, I don't know. I wasn't familiar with your game sort of idea. This is exactly like this. Like, we didn't think Oscar was going to do as well as he did, because just being a rookie and everything like that coming into the sport. But man, he took that car by the bull, especially from like Silverstone onwards, and he just drove the hell out of that thing.
I just am looking at these lists, Andrew, and it's like I just can't believe how wrong we were.
It was so bad. Like, but Oscar winning FIA Rookie of the Year. He had a P2, had 2 podiums back to back, Japan and then a Qatar P2. He won a sprint race in Qatar, right? So it was, I can't believe also, Ricci, how the hell did Alpine let this guy go?
It's like a huge step. I mean, remember Netflix making a big deal about that? And then the tweet, he's like, I understand without my consent that I've signed on. And
well, if you think that one's bad, the next one's also really bad. We had Nick De Vries finishing P17, and I quote unquote stated that De Vries's championship pedigree would be the reason why he finished that high in the standings, because it was the first year in F1, and that you said Oscar was to edge him by 5 points. Well, Oscar edged him by 97 points, and Nick didn't even have a seat after Great Britain.
I actually was kind of thinking about this. Is like we only had one driver completely leave the grid only this year. Was him, was Nick.
Yeah, it was only him. And it was, man, he just got put in such a tough position. He didn't help himself at all with development, but they saw the development in Danny Ricciardo. You almost kind of had to wonder at some point, was Danny Rick, was De Vries just a placeholder for when they felt Danny Rick was going to be good enough to return, that they'd find some reason to, release Nick De Vries so that Daniel Ricciardo could join AlphaTauri at that point. But on our team, we thought, or I guess in a sense, was going Alex Albon finishing we had him P18, he finished P13. That Williams development this year was incredible. What James Vowell was able to do in his first season at Williams, especially with when he quoted that the equipment was like 20 years out of date, like to be able to be one of the at times one of the fastest cars in a straight is quite remarkable in that case.
Yeah, and I think like I really wish that like he would get a better shot with a better team, because I think he has proven, especially this year, like at moments where Alex Albon should not be driving for Williams. I think he definitely has and I think he's in a redemption trip himself. Like ever since being cut by Red Bull, like this man is like fighting, and I'm happy that he was able to prove himself this year in a car that maybe doesn't deserve him. But it was just pretty remarkable to see what he was able to accomplish at times this year.
I think he drives better in that underdog role, in my opinion, though. think he's more free when he drives in that underdog role. But
Well, I think we can say that with a lot of drivers too. Like I feel like when they don't have, you especially play with an NHL team or something that has a smaller market, like an Arizona, like the attention's not on you like a Toronto.
that's fair. Yuki, we had P19 finishing below Nick DeVries as his teammate, and he finished P14 with with I believe it was 17 points this season. You know, kudos to Yuki. He was able to really come back, especially after Pierre left, and take control of that team to really push them to a P8 finish in the drivers championship, when for the longest time it was they were P10. And a couple like key results late on in the season, I'm thinking in particular, they had 3 back like in US, Mexico, and I think Brazil, where they had points finishes, really pushed them to get to that P8 spot.
Yeah, and I'm definitely curious to see what that's going to play into next year. I'm curious to see how that team is going to be able to respond, especially with Daniel Ricciardo now going to have to be back there in a full capacity, is going to be there in a full capacity driver's seat, as he only came in for the remainder of the season. So, I mean, we got. Do we really have high hopes for them? I think time will tell. But hopefully, I think Yuki can get more than 20 points next season. I think that's possible.
I think with them bringing AlphaTauri or Racing Bulls or whatever they're called next year, based on what I've read recently, is that they had a chance to sell for like $1 billion. Or Rebel did. They did not. I think they're gonna bring operations to Milton Keynes sooner rather than later, so that they can help with development or provide, say, those potential resources for development in that case. I think they should have a relatively good season, but only time will tell, based on how they're able to develop now that, unfortunately, France Tost is, retired, and Laurent Marquise is now into the team principal role in that case. And then last but not least, we had Logan Sargent finishing P20, and due to Liam Lawson, he finished P21 in a 20-person race this year. So tough. But luckily, he was able to secure his first F1 point at home in Austin, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. It'll be interesting to see how he rebounds. Like next year, I think. I think he definitely was going to. I think there was definitely some periods where he showed some greatness and he was able to score a point, no problem. But I think there'll definitely be a little bit more pressure on him. It does feel good that he has the like support of the team. I think definitely, but again, like for me, what I said earlier in last week's episode, I think everybody, no matter where they place this year, there's going to be an expectation they have to do even better next year.
Completely agree in that case, because the bar has now been set high, for some of the performance, especially like say for like an Alex Albon, for a Yuki Tsunoda. Those guys have now been able to prove that they can kind of fight in the midfield at times. Now they're going to have to really showcase how, really make it a consistent opportunity when they are presented to them, to be able to fight for more points. And because it really is a dogfight between P7 and P10 in the constructors.
Yeah, I think definitely we'll see how the constructors shape up next year. I think we have a lot to kind of really think about for next year. I can't wait to kind of like talk about that and see how the winter break continues to play out for when it comes to the teams and the drivers. Curious to see what our fans say. Like we did post, I don't think we get any responses today, but we were hoping to hear what are going to be some wild submissions what are going to be some wild submissions and predictions that we're going to have for the 2024 season. Also want to note that the Formies, we're hoping to record either at the end of the month or maybe early on in January. So definitely we're going to have, I think we're going to post on social media, Andrew, is what the categories that we're hoping to talk about or whatever we want to call it, the predicted categories. Think we want to bring in a fan specific one, so we'll take submissions and maybe that will be like the F1 podcast fan award. So maybe we think of something like that. But I think we're looking forward to the next episode, and I think everyone's excited we're going into the holiday break. It'll be exciting to kind of get a break. And also, the good thing about the holiday break, Andrew, we don't have to look at these predictions ever again.
Yeah, no, these predictions are going right into the garbage.
With all the rest of the wrapping paper.
Exactly. We'll put a nice little bow on top, maybe set it on fire. Who knows? But yes, looking forward to a nice 2024 season. We'll be wrapping it up, our 2023 season with our at Formies, and then it will be full throttle on the 2024 season. You know, we have two new names that are going to be announced, right? With regards to Sauber, who's, you know, Alfa Romeo has now lost their title partner, no longer their title partner. As well as AlphaTauri and that kind of rebranding to see what that's going to be like. You know, with if it's Racing Bulls, I do not want to watch that crap. Like, do something, please. Like, go back to Toro Rosso, not Racing Bulls. That just sounds so stupid.
I think we have a lot to definitely see in the 2024 season. So on behalf of the F1 podcast, we want to wish everyone a happy holidays. And enjoy a happy new year, and hopefully you get to enjoy, spend some time with some family and receive some great gifts. We're very appreciative of the support that we've received. We're almost at the 700 followers on Instagram. Make sure to keep following us on our social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think I got them. Threads. I think I got all of them, Andrew. And you know, keep following us, and we're going to continue to post some stuff over the break. We're going to want to hear your feedback of what you thought of the 2023 season. We're curious to know how bad your predictions were or how good your predictions were. And also, Andrew, you want to congratulate you on winning this year's fantasy. We'll figure out what the next year's fantasy is going to be, but 1 year was me, this year was you. And curious who's going to step up in next year win the 2024 F1 podcast fantasies. So a lot to kick back into 2024. And yeah, stay tuned for the Formies episode coming shortly. And just a big thank you. So just thank you for all the support we've had. So thanks, everyone.